In the early 1800s, a storm rumbled across southern Africa, not from the sky, but from the earth. It was the sound of thousands of warriors marching in formation, spears gleaming under the sun. Their leader, an unstoppable force named Shaka. In just a few years, this one man transformed a small, scattered tribe into one of the most feared military powers on the continent, the Zulu kingdom. His rise was swift, brutal, and brilliant. But Shaka's story isn't just about conquest. It's about innovation, discipline, and the price of power. Under his leadership, the Zulu didn't just fight. They changed how war was fought. They redefined loyalty, and they challenged both African and colonial rivals alike. This is the story of how a warrior became a king, how that king built an empire, and how the ripple effects of his reign still echo today. Prepare to march with Shaka's war machine. A prince without a throne, Shaka's early life and the birth of a warrior. Shaka was born around 1787 in the southeastern part of what is now South Africa. His father, Senzangakona, was a minor chieftain of the Zulu clan, which was a small offshoot of the larger Nguni-speaking peoples. His mother, Nandi, was from the Lengeni clan, and their union was not welcomed by either side. Shaka and Nandi were soon cast out. They lived in exile, wandering among different tribes, often poor and mistreated. It was a harsh childhood, but it forged something in Shaka. He grew tall, strong, and fiercely intelligent. He was mocked, but never broken. And when he came of age, he joined the Mtetwa army under King Dingiswayo, a man who would become his mentor. Dingiswayo was different from most chiefs. He believed in unity, in strategy, and in nurturing talent. Under him, Shaka flourished. He proved himself in battle, became an officer, and quickly began developing his own ideas about warfare. In 1816, after his father's death, Shaka made his move. With support from Dingiswayo, he overthrew his half-brother Sigujana and became the chief of the Zulu. The tribe was still small, maybe just 1,500 people, but Shaka had a vision far greater than anyone imagined. His first move? Reform the military. He introduced the short stabbing spear, or ikulwa, replacing the long throwing spear. This forced close combat, more brutal but more effective. He reorganized the army into disciplined regiments, impis, drilled constantly, and enforced strict discipline. Warriors were not allowed to marry until they proved themselves in battle. Cowards were executed. He also introduced the buffalo horns formation, a tactical masterpiece. The chest engaged the enemy, while the horns flanked and encircled. It was simple, devastating, and uniquely Zulu. Under Shaka, the Zulu became not just a tribe, but a machine. His rise coincided with a period of upheaval across southern Africa known as a mfakane, crushing or scattering. It was a time of drought, migration, and violent competition among tribes. Shaka seized the moment. Between 1816 and 1828, he absorbed or destroyed over 100 rival clans. Some estimates suggest that as many as 1 to 2 million people were displaced or killed during this era. His forces swept through KwaZulu-Natal, reshaping the political map. Shaka wasn't just a butcher. He incorporated conquered peoples into his army, established rigorous military discipline, and his Zulu state expanded through both military force and functional social organization. Yet beneath the power, danger brewed. His harsh methods created enemies. After his mother died in 1827, Shaka descended into grief-fueled madness. He banned crop planting, executed pregnant women, ordered mass mourning under threat of death. His grip weakened, and in 1828, his own brothers assassinated him. But Shaka's death was not the end of the Zulu kingdom. It was just the beginning of the next, more dangerous phase. From conqueror to kingdom, the Zulu under Shaka's successors. When Shaka died in 1828, he left behind a kingdom that was both feared and fragile. Though his military conquests were unmatched, his erratic later rule had sown seeds of distrust. His half-brother was no Shaka, but he was no fool either. He knew the Zulu kingdom needed consolidation, not just more conquests. He executed some of Shaka's closest allies, aiming to break with the past and eliminate rivals. But his rule, while more cautious, still embraced the iron traditions of Zulu militarism. He continued to use impis to maintain dominance over rival clans. However, Dingane would soon face a new and unfamiliar kind of enemy, white settlers from the south. By the early 1830s, Dutch-speaking Boer settlers, known as Voortrekkers, began migrating into the interior of southern Africa. They sought land, independence, and escape from British colonial rule in the Cape Colony. The Boers viewed African kingdoms as obstacles to be overcome. To Dingane, they were invaders. Initially, Dingane tried diplomacy, but tensions mounted. And in 1838, a fateful meeting occurred. Piet Retief, a Boer leader, arrived at Dingane's royal kraal to negotiate land rights. Dingane, in a calculated move, signed a treaty and then turned on the visitors. Retief and his entire delegation were massacred. It was a stunning betrayal, and it triggered a brutal retaliation. In December 1838, at the Battle of Blood River, around 470 Boers defended a lager, wagon fort, against an attacking force of more than 10,000 Zulu warriors. Using muskets, cannons, and tight formations, the Boers inflicted massive casualties. Over 3,000 Zulu warriors were killed, while no Boers reportedly died. It was a humiliating defeat. Dingane's prestige crumbled. He was soon overthrown by another of Shaka's half-brothers, Mpande, who allied with the Boers to claim the throne. Mpande's reign, 1840 to 1872, was more peaceful. He focused on stability, trade, and political alliances. He maintained the military system, but softened its harshness. Under Mpande, the Zulu kingdom prospered, not through fear, but through diplomacy. Still, the shadow of Shaka loomed. The Zulu identity was inseparable from its warrior past, and when Mpande's son, Cetshwayo, came to power, he sought to restore that martial glory. Cetshwayo reintroduced strict military discipline. He rebuilt the Impi regiments, centralized authority, and rejected British demands for subjugation. His defiance set the stage for the most famous conflict in Zulu history, the Anglo-Zulu War of 1879. The Anglo-Zulu War. Empire meets its match. The year was 1879, and the Zulu kingdom stood at a crossroads. Cetshwayo, Shaka's half-nephew, ruled a nation that was proud, militarized, and fiercely independent. But looming to the south was the British Empire, industrialized, expansionist, and determined to dominate all of southern Africa. The British wanted control over the rich mineral lands of Zululand and the broader region. More than that, they saw the Zulu kingdom as a threat to their imperial ambitions. So in late 1878, British High Commissioner Sir Henry Bartle Frere issued an ultimatum to Cetshwayo: disband your army and submit to British rule. Cetshwayo refused. War was declared. The first major clash came at Isandlwana on January 22, 1879. It remains one of the most astonishing upsets in colonial history. A Zulu force of roughly 20,000 overwhelmed and annihilated a British contingent of about 1,800 soldiers. The British, though armed with rifles and artillery, were poorly deployed. Zulu tactics, discipline, and sheer determination won the day. Over 1,300 British soldiers were killed in a single afternoon, the worst defeat ever suffered by British forces against an indigenous army up to that. Britain was stunned, but it responded with brutal efficiency. In the weeks that followed, British reinforcements poured into Natal. They were better supplied, more cautious, and ruthlessly methodical. Despite heroic Zulu resistance, including the famed stand at Rorke's Drift, where fewer than 150 British soldiers held off thousands, the tide turned. By July 1879, British forces had captured and burned the Zulu capital Ulundi. King Cetshwayo was captured in late August 1879 and subsequently exiled to Cape Town, marking the end of formal Zulu resistance. The Zulu military system was dismantled. Zululand was divided and ruled through puppet chiefs loyal to the British crown. The Anglo-Zulu War marked the formal end of Zulu independence, but not Zulu identity. Cetshwayo was briefly restored to a small portion of his kingdom in 1883, but his power was symbolic. By the end of the 19th century, Zululand was fully absorbed into the British colony of Natal, later to become part of the Union of South Africa. And yet, the Zulu people remained resilient. Songs, oral traditions, and rituals preserved their history. The story of Isandlwana became legend, and Shaka's ghost, his legacy of discipline, strength, and unity, continued to inspire. The Anglo-Zulu War was more than a colonial clash. It was the last roar of a lion, a final stand of a warrior nation unwilling to bow quietly. Shaka's legacy, memory, myth, and modern South Africa. Long after the last spear fell silent and the Union Jack flew over Zululand, the legend of Shaka lived on. In fact, it grew. Across the 20th century, Shaka became not just a historical figure, but a symbol. To some, he was a tyrant who built an empire on blood. To others, he was a visionary who forged unity out of chaos. But to many South Africans, especially during apartheid, he became a beacon of pride, a reminder of a time when Africa produced kings who defied empires. During British rule and into the apartheid-era South Africa, Zulu history was often distorted or downplayed. Colonial historians portrayed Shaka as savage and bloodthirsty. But Zulu oral traditions told a different story, of a leader who brought discipline, centralized power, and forged a national identity. By the 1980s and 1990s, Shaka's image reemerged, reclaimed by artists, musicians, and political leaders. Statues went up. His name was invoked in songs and rallies. He became part of the cultural revival that sought to reconnect modern South Africa with its African roots. Today, Shaka is taught in schools, celebrated in festivals, and studied by historians. His life raises complex questions. Was he a nation builder or a warmonger? Was the Mfakane exaggerated by colonial chroniclers, or was it a necessary upheaval that birthed new states and systems? What is clear is this: Shaka Zulu changed Southern Africa forever. His military innovations influenced not only his contemporaries, but also future resistance movements. His model of centralized authority challenged tribal fragmentation. His legend continues to shape Zulu's identity in modern democratic South Africa. Even now, Zulu royal houses trace their lineage to Shaka's family. Though he died childless, his legacy flows through the bloodlines of leaders who balance tradition and modern governance. In KwaZulu-Natal, where the hills once echoed with the footfalls of impis, you'll find schools named after Shaka, cultural centers, battle reenactments, and tourists from around the world are learning how one man, armed with a spear and a vision, stood against chaos and carved out a kingdom. Shaka's rise was meteoric. His death was tragic, but his impact, enduring. Conclusion: the rise of the Zulu kingdom under Shaka was one of the most dramatic transformations in African history. From a marginalized child to a master of warfare, Shaka reshaped his people, his region, and his legacy. His story is one of courage, brutality, genius, and tragedy. He turned warriors into soldiers, clans into a kingdom, and his name into legend. And though his reign ended in blood, the kingdom he built endured battles, colonizers, and betrayal. Even today, echoes of Shaka's war machine march on, in culture, in memory, and in the pride of a people who once defied the greatest empires on earth. The Zulu may have laid down their spears, but their spirit, it still stands tall. And that, perhaps, is the most powerful legacy of all. How would you like to get a deeper understanding of history, impress your friends, and predict the future more accurately based on past events? If this sounds like something you might be into, then check out the brand new Captivating History Book Club by clicking the first link in the description. To learn more about Africa's colonial period and its many challenges, check out our book, The Zulu War, a captivating guide to the origins, battles, and legacy of the 19th century Anglo-Zulu conflict. It's available as an ebook and paperback. If you found the video captivating, please hit the like button and subscribe for more.